How do you even know about that?
I know everything, Eddie.
You do?
Everything about you.
How?
I am inside your head. You are a loser, Eddie.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and if you've been keeping up with the comic book news, you know Knull is coming. This is something we've been expecting for a while. It's certainly the symbiote god was introduced in Venom's or Donny Cates' Venom run very early on. Been teasing the character. We've been learning things here or there. Obviously, we learned a little bit more. I believe Knull was awakened in Absolute Carnage, and here to talk with me about this is the man that knows everything about Venom, the proprietor of the Venom Vlog himself, Seek. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I don't know if I know everything about Venom, but a year from now, I could probably claim that title.
Well, you're certainly a Venom addict. You follow the character, even though you're not loving this Donny Cates run as much as I am. Not that I'm loving it. I do think it's really good right now. Right. Not quite as great as it was, or that the excitement isn't quite as much as it was pre Absolute Carnage.
Yeah, I'm just critical of it. It's not that I really hate it or love it. I find myself in the middle, and I have criticisms, but I also have things that I like about it. So I feel like I'm pretty well balanced. Although I would say lately I kind of probably tipped a little bit more into the negative.
All right, so what do you think about Knull, the symbiote god that Donny Cates has introduced? Ryan Stegman's had a big part of it too, because he certainly put a very memorable character look for him. He looks amazing. Whenever you see him on the page, it's a striking visual. Are you excited about Knull? What do you think about the way he's been introduced?
I actually think I don't think Knull is a character. There is nothing to him. He's a Castlevania knockoff design in a lot of ways. He looks like a Dracula knockoff design. Actually, if you watch Dracula, and I know Donny Cates is a big vampire fan. If you watch Dracula Untold, I think it was, there's literally the Dracula character's walking. He's got wings and he's got black armor with a big red dragon on it. And I'm like, wow, that's Knull. Like that's exactly Knull. So no, when he first appeared, I was like, he's a cool concept. I think Knull and having a god of symbiote, I like the concept. So that's where I'm like 50-50 on Donny. I think the concept is great, but Knull is not a character to me. He's just, okay, he's this all powerful bad guy that just, that everyone should fear. It's like, I kind of don't like when writers do that, where they're like, all right, all the other bad guys you fought before, mine's going to be 10 times worse. It's a very like Bendis approach to things. It's a very lazy approach to things. And I don't really like that. But like I said, I feel like having a symbiote god, there's a cool concept there. Knull, I was really excited to read Spider-Man. It was Silver Surfer Black, because in that one, it was like, all right, Silver Surfer is going to go back to the dawn of time. He's going to interact with Knull, and maybe we'll learn more about Knull as a character. And we really don't. In 5 whole issues, we really don't learn much more. All we know is Knull wants to...
Where he came from.
Yeah, we just know we just know where he's at. And then like kind of his motivation is he wants to wipe everything out, and that's it. And so it's just kind of like, all right, so he's very 2-dimensional right now. So I'm hoping what this, the main arc, the Knull arc when it comes out, I'm hoping that's kind of like Endgame, where they teased Thanos in all the Marvel movies, and then in Infinity War and in Endgame they kind of gave him more of a backstory. I'm hoping that's what happens here, where Donny finally sinks his teeth into Knull and figures out who he is as a character and what he truly wants, and try to make it more interesting than just domination.
Also within this, and I think this will definitely pair in with the Knull story arc, Cates also obviously created a son for Eddie Brock, Dylan Brock, who's essentially a symbiote demigod. Right. We don't even know what his power set might be. And obviously when he did the promotion talking about this is going to be a game changer, the biggest event of all times, it was a picture of Eddie Brock sitting next to his son, I think while he was sleeping, watching over him, unaware of what Dylan's actually capable of.
Yeah. So Dylan, AKA plot device Brock. Dylan is again another great concept. You want to give Eddie Brock a son? I'm all for that. I like when characters, like it worked for Batman. I thought he was great when he had a son. Jonathan Kent, I think, is a great character. Mayday Parker, when they did the MC2 universe, she was great for Peter Parker and Mary Jane. So I don't mind the son thing. I think that's a great concept. But when the son is now a demigod, who we still after 25 issues don't know the full extent of his power, that just means he can anytime Donny Cates writes himself in a corner, Dylan can get him out of that corner. And so again, from a technical standpoint, I find myself very critical of Donnie's use of stuff, because I think the theme of family and having Dylan and having Carl, Eddie's father, I think that could have been a great dynamic to kind of play on. And, maybe Carl, because they said he hit Dylan, maybe he hit Dylan because he saw Dylan, in his sleep turning into a monster. And maybe that, so we don't know the psychology really of why Carl was fully hitting Dylan. Also Donny Cates, if you want theme of family to be there, Donny Cates retconned Eddie Brock's sister, who used to torment him as a kid and blame him for their mother's death, because when Eddie was born, his mother died in childbirth. And so ever since then, his father and his sister tormented Eddie, and blamed the death of their mother on him. And so they retcon the sister completely out. So I'm like, so I don't understand. I'm like, so is the theme of this family, and you want to tell a family story, but then why eliminate some of Eddie's family? So I just find myself divided. So Dylan, great concept, but him just being a plot device. It's kind of like when Mogo in the Jeff Johns and Pete Tomasi run of Green Lantern, Mogo would just show up and solve a problem whenever like they got painted into a corner. That's what Dylan is. And so I'm not really, I need more from that character.
Certainly when we just finished up Venom Island, that was the big follow-up story after Absolute Carnage. And we kind of learned a little bit about Dylan Brock. He can sort of sense what the other symbiotes are doing. He can kind of tell when his father's in trouble. He can tell even physically where he's located when that's happening. And it felt like there was definitely a connection between him and Knull. And I think that's why he was introduced. I don't think he was introduced for there to be a nice family story arc. I think he was introduced as a new plot device to allow them to not just be completely destroyed by Knull. That's the way I've taken it. And to learn more information before he arrives.
But like you said, it's a plot device. So it's like, and that's what he is. He's a plot device. He's not a character. And that's my kind of issue with Dylan. And yes, he's going to tie to Knull. I think there was that drawing we saw of a guy that dressed a little bit like Knull, and he's got long hair, and he's got he's practicing social distancing. He's got the mouth over, the mask over his mouth. That may even be Dylan from the future, or like a Dylan who succumbs to Knull's thing. And that's probably what the dynamic's going to be is Dylan going to, join his father, Eddie Brock, in fighting against Knull, or is he going to side with Knull against his father and the human race? And obviously that's going to be a crossroads that the character is probably going to come to at some point. But I want to understand the character a little bit more. And Donny does do that. I think what Donny does the best, to give him credit, obviously, is because he is a good writer, is that he's really good at those moments, those quiet moments. So when he tweeted that picture of Dylan sleeping and Eddie standing over him, he's like, this is a cosmic story, but it's also a story about a son and his father. That's great. I love that he's good at those little small moments. I like the moments in Absolute Carnage when Peter and Eddie communicated and talked to each other. I like the moments with Dylan in that story. I like the tie-in issues of Venom where Dylan was running around with Normie Osborn. So I know that, I know Donny has a love for these characters that he's introducing. So I just want to see, them just a little bit more fleshed out and understand a little bit more where they stand. And obviously that's going to come in time.
And you were kind of talking about Venom Island at the end. There's the last issue. I guess what's supposed to be a big deal is issue 25, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit disappointed by it, but they're doing a little interview with Eddie Brock, and I think 1 or 2 pages in, I was like, oh, he's talking to the Avengers.
Right.
And at the very end, we find out, yes, it is the Avengers. So we know that the Avengers are going to play in this Knull story arc. Do you think it's going to be bigger than the Avengers? It's obviously an Avengers style or a size threat that will require them, but do you think it'll take all the Marvel heroes to rise up to fight Knull and his army of symbiotes?
Yeah, and actually someone brought this up on my show recently, and it was something I think I had semi-knowledge of, but I wasn't paying attention to it, which is the best thing I think Donny's doing and Marvel's doing with this book is that they realize it's a hit. They realize they have a hit writer on it, and they're actually backing it. Like Venom is a character that probably hasn't seen this much push from the company of Marvel in a long time. And so that's, I think, what's helped elevated this character up. And so when he does get elevated like that, and the threat is elevated, like Knull is clearly a big threat. He's someone who killed a Celestial, for crying out loud. And again, like I find that to be kind of lazy power fantasy stuff, like, oh, Dylan can do these 10 things and Knull can do these 10 things. It's like, I know you're trying to set them up to be potential threats and powerful, but I think there's other ways to do it, or more interesting ways. But with that, like, I feel like, yeah, they're doing a good job with, building this up and having Marvel push it. So I think it is going to be a big thing. I think it's going to be more than just, because I think there's a small like Black Cat Spider-Man Venom story that's supposed to happen, and then that's probably going to be the countdown, the Knull, like the big Knull is coming countdown, and that'll be on the banner of every issue for probably like 6 months, and then probably around the time the movie comes out next year, which is in June, I think they'll launch the big Knull story, and I think it's going to involve Thor. I think that's the reason Donny Cates wanted to go write that book, is because he wanted to pick up on those threads Jason Aaron hinted at with the all black sword and all these other elements, the God Butcher and stuff. So I think Donnie's going to start taking over that stuff. He already has in the first 5 issues of his book, and I think he's going to build to a Thor, Venom, Spider-Man, Avengers, and I heard he's working with Jason Aaron on certain stuff. So I don't doubt that this is going to be probably the big summer event for next summer at Marvel.
So in the Knull is coming promo, doesn't it say 2020?
So it says Knull is coming 2020, but obviously this was printed before the pandemic. Actually, this went to the printers, I heard, before the pandemic. So there's a chance that it's going to get pushed back. And like I said, just because this says this, on it, that doesn't mean that like Knull will, like, he may show up.
Could be the prelude to the Knull story.
Exactly. Knull is coming could be the prelude to Knull is here, or something.
Would be weird timing wise, because obviously right now we're in Empire.
Right.
That has to finish up, I believe, in the middle part of August. Then we jump right into Ten of Swords, which is like 27 issues of X-Men or something like that. It basically takes us to the end of the year. And there have been hints in House of X, Powers of 10, I believe in Dawn of X as well, that Knull is somewhat tied to the islands, to Krakoa in some manner. So it would be weird for Ten of Swords to be going on when Knull arrived, because there is some speculation out there that the stories might overlap, or they might actually be connected.
I'll say this, because I heard you and Larry from Larry's Comics talk about this, and I never thought about that, because I'm a huge X-Men fan. Like, you can see all the Venom stuff behind me, but behind my camera here is all X-Men stuff. So I have 2 halves of my room, and I dropped X-Men. I actually don't really, I'm not really digging what Hickman's doing. And so I didn't know about some of this stuff. So when I heard that on your show, I was like, that I would give Marvel so much credit if they actually pull that off. If all the editors and everyone was able to tie in what's happening in like Avengers, and then tie in what's happening in X-Men, and with the Void and stuff, and then tie that into something. And even if Empire ends with, like, they do this big Kree Skrull alien invasion story, and if it ends with Knull coming through the Kree or Skrull Empire and wiping it out and putting symbiotes on all of them and bringing them to Earth, that would be a good way to tie. If the left hand and right hand are actually communicating and they pull that off, I will seriously give Marvel a ton of credit. I don't think that highly of them on that level, but if they pull that off, I will gladly shove my foot in my mouth and read it and buy it all if it's that connected.
It would be amazing if through the void that Apocalypse and his original 4 Horsemen had sealed, out came Knull, and he ended up being like the other herald of the Black Winter.
That would be cool. I have a En Sabanor Apocalypse tattoo on my arm. So I am a huge Apocalypse fan. I met Louise Simonson, a dozen times, and she's always really nice to me when I see her. And she's one of my favorite writers from the 80s and 90s. And I love her stuff. So I would love, that's great that Apocalypse is at the center of this X story. It's making me take a little bit of interest in it. But if that sets up a connection to Knull, and somehow Apocalypse dealt with, Apocalypse has fought Dracula. he's been everywhere. That guy has fought everyone. So if he's also connected to Knull in some way and helped defeat him, or a version of him, or the Grendel at some point in the past, that would be interesting. And I would say it would get me to buy that book, knowing that there's more depth to these characters that I currently feel like there's not a lot of depth to.
There's a lot of missing connective tissue within the Marvel comic universe. It feels like everything's happening separate from each other. Like, even, we got Iron Man 2020 happening right now. I went and read the prelude to Empire. It's two different Tony Starks. It's two different characters. Like, is this happening simultaneously? It feels like it in two different universes, even though it's supposedly they're both in the 616.
It's funny because I try to keep up with that. I try to keep before that. It was a 2099 event at Christmas time that I was, keeping up with the Nick Spencer stuff. And it's funny, out of all the things that they've announced and all these things that are coming, especially the Venom connection stuff, I'm actually not as excited for all that. The stuff I'm excited for is like, I love Daredevil right now. That's my favorite Marvel book, but what they're doing, I think Nick Spencer's bringing the Sin Eater back, and the Sin Eater has actually direct ties to Eddie Brock. I mean, that was the story Eddie Brock was covering for the Daily Globe when Spider-Man caught the real Sin Eater, and Eddie was apparently interviewing a fake Sin Eater, and that's what got Eddie Brock exposed, and that's what then cancel culture came out and got him fired from his job or whatever. That's what I like to joke. Obviously, that's not what really happened, but Eddie did. He screwed up the story on the Sin Eater. So the fact that Sin Eater is coming back, I'm more interested in that as a potential Venom story than I am the Knull thing. But I am still, going to keep collecting. I want to see where it goes, just like everyone else does.
So you think that Sin Eater thread that's about to come up, you think that's going to be what the Spider-Man, Venom, Black Cat kind of miniature crossover story is going to be about?
That would be really great, actually, because it would be cool to see some closure there. And then also there's, I talked about this before, and I think some people in the comments were like, oh, you're reaching, because I was comparing kind of Donny Cates' pacing to Jeff Johns' pacing with Green Lantern. And that's all it was. It was like I was just comparing pacing, like how they're building up around the same issues. Sinestro Corps happened, then Absolute Carnage happened, and then Sinestro was like a precursor to Blackest Night, and Carnage is a precursor to Knull. So it's just like a pacing thing is all I was trying to make the dots I was connecting. But yeah, with this, I feel like that. I feel like that could be a cool way to get some closure there with Eddie and that Sin Eater story before you go and tell the big cosmic story. I personally think that would work.
Well, we do know that Marvel has said that we are entering the space age of Marvel, that we're going to see a heavier influence or emphasis on cosmic level stories and things like that. Obviously, Knull plays into that. The Black Winter is definitely playing into that. Are you excited for this new direction that Marvel is going? Obviously, you're not quite as excited about Knull, maybe as you are about Sin Eater, but are you excited to see Marvel expand back into the stars?
Well, I mean, kind of, because to me, when I look back at Marvel Comics, some of the best stuff, like over the past maybe 20 years, has happened out in space. Like I like the Annihilation stuff a ton, and so to me, they've never really left the space zone. But but at the same time, they have, because most of their events take place on Earth, and it's it's going to change the world. It's going to change this, and it would be cool to see some kind of, like, I don't know, Star Trek-y type approach where the heroes are going out into the universe and seeing what's going on out there. But I still feel like that doesn't mean, and I'm sure they're not gonna, but I hope they don't ignore the street level stuff. Like, I don't want to see Daredevil go out into space. I hope he's still protecting Hell's Kitchen. So some things got to change and some things not so much. So I'm curious to see where they go. It's hard for me to speculate because I'll be honest, I've dropped a lot of Marvel titles. So to be fair to them, like, I don't really know and haven't seen the stuff you and some of your other viewers have seen. So I'm not very good at the dot connecting on that kind of stuff right now.
Well, all right. See, I think we kind of covered, a lot of this Knull stuff. We went off a little bit off the trail, but that's what we do when we talk comic books. Is there anything else that you needed to talk about Knull, or maybe about Dylan Brock, moving forward, kind of what you expect to happen?
Well, like I said, Donny is good at those character moments, and I will always give him credit for that because he does really good job at that. So I don't want, like I said at the beginning, I'm fair. I'm a fair reviewer just because I'm the Venom Vlog and I've done 500 episodes about Venom. I don't just like love everything that comes out. I have a critical mind and I think about things. Doesn't mean people agree with me. So I always invite people to give me their perspectives and everything. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on your chat, your comments down below and see what people say. And if people do have different opinions of me, I love hearing them. I love reading them. I usually give people a thumbs up, especially when they have opposing opinions. I just like hearing it. And I just love that people care about this book, whether I love it or not, or whether I love X-Men or not, as long as they keep selling. That is all I care about, because that keeps the characters around. It keeps them relevant. It brings in a new audience, or brings back a returning audience of people who haven't read the character in years. So to me, that's good. Like that's good for business. That's good for the character. And that keeps the character around another 30 plus years. So if you're out there and you're enjoying these books, thank you. I'm glad you are. And if you ever want to talk about them, you can definitely come over to my channel or comment down below and I'll try to respond.
Well, certainly between the upcoming Spider-Man, Venom, Black Cat little story, we're going to get Knull coming to the Marvel Comics universe, as well as Venom 2 coming to theaters, in 2021. Probably not a better time to be a Venom fan.
It's the best time. I mean, we got toys coming out. We have currently a Maximum Venom cartoon on Disney XD, where I got to interview J.M. DeMatteis, who was one of the writers of the Moon Knight episode that came out recently, and the head writers of the show too, Kevin Burke and Doc Wyatt. So to me, it's great. I got to interview David Quinn. Like everyone always tells me, why isn't Venom 2 rated R? It's Carnage. It has to be rated R. And I always go, well, Carnage is usually PG-13. And 95% of his career, he's been PG-13 stories. But there was 2 stories that were rated R, or mature rated stories, and I had the writer of one of those on my show recently, David Quinn. He wrote Carnage, It's a Wonderful Life. So that was great to talk to someone who actually did write a rated R Carnage story. So no, this is the best time to be a Venom fan, and whether I'm liking what's happening now or not shouldn't matter to anyone else out there. As long as they're enjoying it, that helps me create content.
Absolutely. All right, I'll talk to you later, brother.
All right, thank you, man. Bye, everyone.